One of the biggest concerns in America today is our country's policy on gun control. And now we have seen a lot of news about public shootings and not just our lifetime, but especially over the past few months. And while the idea of not needing guns is preferred, and obviously I think we would all want to live in a society where weapons aren't used, but unfortunately that isn't the case. And thus, it is not logical to take away guns from the citizens of the United States. Okay, so let's go ahead and debunk this whole idea that America should be gunless and that we need more gun reform. And I'll give it to you. And according to gunpolicy.org, gun homicides have risen throughout the years. And let me start by saying that also that no one wants this to continue. Like, no one wants people to get hurt and die for no reason. It is a terrible trend that needs to stop, but gun reform it's just not the answer. It's not logical. And the idea that leftists have is that if there are no guns, there will be less crime. And again, I understand that perspective, and I do not agree with it. And I'm going to tell you a reason why. Let's look at Chicago, Illinois, for an example, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the United States. Sarah Huckabee, the White House's press secretary, said the following in an interview in late of last year. And she said, I think one of the things we don't want to do is try to create laws that won't stop these types of things from happening. I think if you look to Chicago, where you had over 4,000 victims of gun-related crimes last year, they have the strictest gun laws in the country. That certainly hasn't helped there. Okay, and she's absolutely right. And for a city that is safer than only 8% of America, and this number, by the way, is based on the number of crimes and crime rate per 1,000 residents, that should give you guys an idea that even though gun regulation is there, that it just does not stop the crimes, okay? And that is a fact. And I think a lot of times what the Democrats try and do, and especially the media tries and does, is they try and guilt trip you whenever situations like this happen. And that certainly isn't a way to go about changing such policy. If you want to change policy, you need to come to the table with facts. You don't need to spew out and try and get emotional reactions. And that's exactly what this whole movement has been about. And again, no one wants these kids to get hurt, and no one wants anyone to die for no reason. But if you want to stop something, if you want to change something, you need to come to the table with facts. And that is something that, relatively speaking, the Democrats haven't done so far in this movement. And the idea that murder rates are increasing, so we need less guns to defend our families, is absolute nonsense. And actually, according to the Brennan Center for Justice, crime rates decreased in 2017 as compared to 2016. So the numbers are going down overall. Now, while the number of gun homicides has gone up, the overall trend is going down, which should at least tell you that people are starting to go, we're starting to get in the right direction bit by bit. You know, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, and it certainly isn't the case where, and like I said, I showed you with that Chicago statistic, even though there are gun laws that keep being implemented to try and prevent this stuff from happening, the crime rates are still there and they're still consistent. So to say that we need mass gun reform across the United States it's just not valid, guys. And like I said, going back to the media, CNN in particular, who clearly has a biased agenda. If you haven't seen any of their videos, if you haven't seen any of their interviews, and the people like Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg from that Parkland school in Florida where that terrible shooting happened, they've been getting a lot of publicity, and good for them. And I'm not sitting here and say that their movement isn't good and that the purpose behind it isn't heartfelt and meaningful. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm not saying they're bad people, but again, what are they bringing to the table that's factual? What are they bringing to the table that's actually going to fix the problem, instead of just getting a bunch of people wound up for relatively nothing? And one of the students, when CNN actually hosted a town hall, was Senator Marco Rubio. And one of the students said something pretty immoral that I found. And it's quite ironic, because Democrats will look at Republicans and they'll say, well, you're immoral because you don't want to take away guns and you don't want to protect our kids. But when one student goes to Marco Rubio and says, it is hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15. Really? So that's what you're going with. So instead of looking what actually failed in these situations, like law enforcement, for example, which had the FBI had a tip on the Parkland shooter and also on the YouTube shooter recently, and they chose to do nothing in both situations, which is absolutely crazy. And I specifically after the YouTube shooter, which came later on, I don't understand how you go from not knowing about the Parkland shooter and something like this coming up, and someone telling you, hey, this person's probably going to go to YouTube and try and shoot the place up, and you do nothing. So, what really fails here? Law abiding gun owners who had nothing to do with the issue, or law enforcement that chose to do nothing? It's a pretty simple answer, guys.